Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. We're in the Zera Shimshon. We're in Parsha Shlach. We're beginning the first Ois Aleph. The Zera Shimshon is going to touch on a very interesting idea, a very interesting topic. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu davened for Yeshua. Yeshua's original name was Hosea. Moshe Rabbeinu took the Yud from Sarah, who originally was called Sarai, right? Hashem changed Sarai to Sarah to give her the ability to have a child. Hashem took the Yud and kept it aside. And Moshe Rabbeinu took the Yud, whatever that means exactly. Moshe Rabbeinu had the koyach to take that Yud and attach it to Yehoshua. And that helped Yehoshua overcome the scheme, the plot that the Meraglim had. So the Zera Shimshon wants to know what exactly happened over here. What exactly was the koyach of the Yud that Moshe Rabbeinu gave to Yeshua, and how that allowed him to overcome Atas Meraglim. In addition, based on this idea, the Shimshon takes it a step further and discusses why Moshe Rabbeinu didn't also daven for Kalev. If Moshe Rabbeinu felt that it was important enough to daven for Yeshua, why didn't he daven for Kalev? So it says the Zera Shimshon, Vayikra Moshe L'Hoshea ben Nun Yeshua. Moshe Rabbeinu called Hoshea ben Nun, his Talmud Muvak, Yehoshua. And Pirush Rashi explains, Ko Yoshiacha, right? This is not a Kabbalah Sefer. Rashi explains that the intent that Moshe Rabbeinu had by adding the letter Yud, that adding on the letter Yud gave Yeshua a special koyach. And now, Rashi explains, the Yud, followed by the next letter in his name, Hey, gave him the koyach of Ko. Hashem should help you, Me'atzas Meraglim. So in the name of Hoshea, Moshe Rabbeinu added the word Yud, which gave Yeshua the name of Hashem. So Kasha, as Shimshon says, Lama Ko Yoshiacha. Why did you need the Yud and the Hey to form a letter of Hashem? If it was important to have the letter of Hashem, then even one letter of Hashem would help, and Yeshua already had one letter of Hashem, which was the Hey. If it's so important to have Hashem's name in your name, he already had it with the Hey of Hoshea. The truth is, the Zera Shimshon asks the Baal Kasha, he says, Moshe Rabbeinu only added the Yud, so how do you get Ko Yoshiacha? Why do you need to add the letter? And if you're adding the letter, his spalul, what do you have to daven for him? It seems that Moshe Rabbeinu was required and took two steps. He took step number one is that he added a letter, which is Yud. And in addition, he also davened. What was the tefillah? He said that Hashem should help you from the Atzas Meraglim. V'yesh loima, the Isa b'Zoyar. So Zera Shimshon explains that there's a Zoyar in this week's parsha that says on the pasuk Kulam Anoshim, Kulan Zakun Hava. In reality, all the Meraglim were tzaddikim. Bereisha Yisrael Havu, and they were the heads of Klal Yisrael. Aval inun de beiru legarmayu itabisha, but they took themselves bad advice. They, amongst themselves, they hatched or they schemed evil intentions. Amai nitl etadu. Why talk if they were tzaddikim did they take this advice? Allah Amri, they said, the Meraglim said, Iyalun Yisrael Ara, if Klal Yisrael goes into the Eretz Yisrael, they were concerned of the following problem. Nis'aber anot milheviration. We will no longer be the heads of the Shvatim. We will no longer be considered the leaders. Why? Because in the Midbar, we were the leaders. In Eretz Yisrael, there would be new leaders. V'yamane Moshe Reishin Achron. We were zoicha to be in the midbar, the heads of the shvatim, the heads of the people. So the fundamental point, what caused the Meraglim to do the Avera, was they were concerned that if Klal Yisrael would go into Eretz Yisrael, they would no longer be the heads of the shvatim. They would no longer be the heads of Klal Yisrael. And therefore, in order to prevent that from happening, they hatched the scheme to convince the people not to go into Eretz Yisrael. So in reality, it seems that there was a little bit of a gaiva problem here. that because they weren't willing to step down in order to allow Klal Yisrael to go into Eretz Yisrael, whether ultimately this was correct or not, it's unclear, but it seems that they were concerned of this problem, and therefore they hatched the scheme and went with the intention of convincing Klal Yisrael not to go in. V'kasu Mekubalim. Now, the Mekubalim say, the Zera Shimshon, that the name Yud Kei, that now was found in Yeshua's name, Eino Shayr Abal Gaiva, cannot rest on someone who's a Bal Gaiva. The Gemara in Saita says that a person who's a Bal Gaiva, I cannot be with him. Ultimately, a person who's a Bal Gaiva, Hashem removes the Shechina from him. And therefore, V'hoyel she'elu ha'anashim chotu machmas ha'gaiva, these anashim, the spies, they sinned because they were Bal Gaiva. As we explained, why were they Bal Gaiva? Because they thought they were special. And they thought they were so special that they convinced themselves that if they went to Eretz Yisrael, they would no longer be special, and people would ignore them, and there would be new leaders. So they were Bal Gaivas. Right? It reminds me of a famous story with Rabbi Aryeh Levine. There was one of the head dayanim in Yerushalayim had to leave for a period of time. Either he was sick, he had to travel overseas, and uncharacteristically, Rabbi Aryeh Levine demanded that he should be appointed as the dayan in his place. And the Bezdin couldn't understand. Rabbi Aryeh Levine was like the classic Anav. He was an Anav. He thought nothing of himself. He gave up of himself. And here he comes, and he's adamant that only he should be picked to be the head of the Bezdin. And they didn't know what to do because they were thinking of other people. However, ultimately, Rabbi Aryeh Levine, who was a tremendous tzaddik and on his own merit happens to be the judge, and he was so adamant about it that they picked him to be the judge. And people asked him, "What's pshat?" And he wouldn't answer. He said, "This is what I want, and I want to be the dayan." A year or two later, the original dayan who had to leave returned, and as soon as returned, Rav Aryeh Levine stepped down. He retired, and he gave the post back to the original person, the original dayan who left. And then Rav Aryeh Levine said that he knew that if someone else would come, it wouldn't be so easy for him to step down and return the seat of dayanis back to the original dayan. And therefore, Rav Aryeh Levine felt in order to actually protect the honor of the original dayan, he didn't care about being a dayan or not. He knew ultimately it wasn't something that he wanted to do. So therefore, he adamantly took upon himself to be the dayan temporarily in order to return the dayanis back to the original dayan. Here, the spies actually did the opposite. They refused to make way for the next round of leaders, and by fearing that they would be replaced, they concocted this evil scheme. And Memela, the Zera Shimshon explains to us that since they were Bal Gaiva, they ended up doing this Avera. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu added the Yud and the K to Yeshua, because Yeshua, as we know, was an Onav. As the Pasuk says, V'lo yomosh hanar, the Nar, which we know refers to Yeshua, never left Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, Umesharsa Yeshua benun, says the Zera Shimshon, Nar lo yomosh. We know that Yeshua was the Talmud Muvik of Moshe Rabbeinu. And who was Moshe Rabbeinu? The Onav of the Anavim. The Ish Moshe, the Pasuk says, Onav Mioid. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu understood two things. Number one, he understood that Yeshua would be saved. And he would be saved because he would be able to put the name of Hashem on Yeshua, and that would protect him. How did he know that he would be saved? Because he knew that this name would attach itself to someone who's an Onav. And Moshe Rabbeinu was no fool. He knew that, even though he knew he was the Manik, he was the leader, he didn't hold of himself that he deserved it. He thought, Hashem chose me, and that's my role. And if Hashem chooses someone else, there's nothing to do with me. And he knew that Yeshua was just as big as an Onav. V'hashtanicha, says the Zera Shimshon, shespal Yeshua, v'lo al Kalev. We know and understand now why that Moshe Rabbeinu davened for Yeshua and not for Kalev. Because Kalev, he didn't know if he was an Onav or not. Yeshua, who was his Talmud Muvik, wherever Moshe Rabbeinu went, Yeshua went, so he saw him firsthand. He was always able to watch him and to see him, and he experienced firsthand that Yeshua was an Anav. So for Moshe Rabbeinu to daven that Yeshua should be saved by adding the name of Yud K was, a no-brainer. He knew it would work. Avol Kolev, he didn't know, and therefore he did not daven for him. V'akosov shel Yonasan ben Uziel, Misayenu, and the Yonasan ben Uziel, the Targum, helps us and proves that this idea, says the Zera Shimshon, that the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu only davened for Yeshua, because he was confident that Yeshua would be saved. He knew that the name Yud K would rest upon Yeshua, because Yeshua was an Anav. And the Zera Shimshon is quoting the Yonasan ben Uziel, and it says as follows: "V'kadchama Moshe inisanuse." When Moshe saw Yehoshua's anivus, his humbleness, Kara Moshe lo Hishea banun Yeshua. So in actuality, what the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel is telling us is that as a result of Moshe noticing that Yeshua was an Anav, he added the name from Hosea to Yeshua. V'ayin oid mizel el v'pashas lech lecha al pasuk v'ayet tahala. V'oid yesh lema b'tirs kushas ha'mefarshim. So now we can delve further. Lama hispal Moshe al Yeshua v'lo al Kolev. So as we explained, the kushim mikar lesa, the mai ulime de Kolev. What do we know by Kolev? Misham meraglim. How do we know that Kolev was any different than the rest of the meraglim? Which means Moshe Rabbeinu must have known that the meraglim were balgaiva. Whatever that means, obviously on their level. He had no proof that Kolev wasn't. Shari ba'oisa shal kulam ha'yikashayim. V'hi mispal al Kolev. Moreover, if he would daven on Kolev, ha'yiloi mispal nam yakulam. Shashem yatzilem yachet u'machshavas rois. Now it's true, it's a very good question why Taka he didn't daven for all of them. But right now we're going to go that Yeshua was Moshe Rabbeinu's Talmud. He felt responsible for him, so therefore he davened for him. And the Zera Shimshon takes it a step further. That every individual has Bechira. Moshe Rabbeinu was nervous that everybody would fall into this trap. However, at that moment, Moshe Rabbeinu said they're all tzaddikim. And therefore, since they're all tzaddikim, there's no reason for me to daven. However, since Yeshua was an Anav, he knew that from Shemayim, they would help him overcome the evil plot, the scheme that the Meraglim hatched. So the Zera Shimshon explains a beautiful teretz. He says the reality, everybody has free will. Everybody has free choice. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, I picked tzaddikim. And even though I know that there's a great danger here, ultimately, they all have their free choice to overcome. Yeshua has a special trait. He's an Anav. And a person who's an Anav, Hashem helps them. Hashem guides them. There's a special siyata d'shmaya that an Anav has. There's a famous story, there's a famous tradition that we have that in the times of the Beis Yosef, there were 3 people worthy to write the Sefer that we now know as the Beis Yosef, the Shulchan Aruch. From Shemayim, there were 3 people that were chosen or that were looked at who would write what we know now today as the Beis Yosef, the Shulchan Aruch. And ultimately, they gave the special siyata d'shmaya to the Beis Yosef, to Rabbi Yosef Kara, because he was the most humble person of the 3. So we see from here, says the Zera Shimshon, that the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu davened specifically for Yeshua, not just only like we said that it was his Talmud, but Moshe Rabbeinu knew that any challenge, any nisayon that would come their way, automatically Yeshua would have siyata d'shmaya from Shemayim, because he was an Anav. So since he was an Anav, Moshe Rabbeinu felt that it was proper to daven for him, because anyways he would have siyata d'shmaya. So therefore, by davening for him, wouldn't actually remove the bechira from Yehoshua. So therefore, he added the name Yud. Now, as Rashi tells us, he had the specific letter of Yud K that attaches itself to an Anav, which helped Yehoshua overcome the Atzas Meraglim, and eventually Him and Kalev were the only ones that went into Eretz Yisrael from that generation. And Yeshua ended up being the one who actually brought Klal Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael. And we should be zeicha that Moshe and Yeshua shall once again lead us back into Eretz Yisrael. From here, Amen.